Okay, well, thanks everybody for coming from far and wide, all the way from California, um, and up north, and up north. I don't know where anybody else is from here, it's mostly local. Thank you, Andrea and Muriel, and their new gallery is just so amazing, and it's been great showing work with Charles Lyon, and he's got some amazing pieces over there, so it's nice to show work together with him. Um, so a little background on me. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, outside Cleveland, about an hour on the east side and on a farm. And I grew up, I'm one of five kids, and our family was always very artistic. And, we're full of writers, woodworkers, musicians. And my father, Michael, um, he was a dentist for most of his life. He was a dentist. And then at age 50, he decided to quit dentistry and go to art school for sculpture because he always wanted to do sculpture, and he was always very creative with his hands, with woodworking and bronze and everything. So growing up in a house watching my father make sculpture was just so inspiring for me, and painting and drawing. And so it was just an inspiring thing to be around such an active artistic family. And we grew up on a farm, so it was very picturesque, in the woods. And so that was great. And then I went to art school, and I went to the Cleveland Institute of Art and studied painting and drawing. And then I decided to get my master's in painting and go to California, of all places, the Bay Area. And I went to the California College of Arts and Crafts. Sometimes they don't say crafts, but it's arts and crafts. And I did painting and drawing there for a long time, and I lived there for a while. And then I just moved to this city, to the Twin Cities, about 3 years ago, which I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving living here. I love the people here, and I've met a lot of friends, so it's been great. Um, so I want to talk a little bit about. Oh wait, what was I going to say next? Something about the. Oh, okay. So when Andrea asked me to do a show at the gallery, I was thinking it was around the time my father had passed away. So my father passed away in January 2025, and I was going through all these old photographs of my family, and within that selection of photographs was these books that my grandmother Anna Marie took of her photographs, and she was a professional photographer in Berlin, Germany. And she worked in a photo studio taking photographs of families and children. So she was a professional photographer. And then she met my grandfather, who was a playwright and a director in Berlin. So he was also very artistic. And they met and had two children. And then she stopped working and took care of the children mostly. And the children were my father, Michael, and my aunt, Monica, who was younger than him. So she would just take her camera around everywhere and photograph them as children, going on vacations. Berlin, her family, they would go to the Baltic Sea or North Sea, and they'd vacation up there. They would go to the Black Forest. They would ride their bicycles around Black Forest. And she was also a very active person. She was into swimming and sports and skiing, and they did all these things. So they are all depicted in these pictures. And when I was looking at them, I was thinking, I've always painted families that I don't know. Like most of my work, if you're familiar with it, or if you don't know my work quite yet, I usually paint photographs of people I don't know from estate sales or, garage sales. I find all these old photos, black and white photos or Kodachrome photos from the 50s and 60s, and I just picked these families up that have been abandoned by people, because mostly estate sales are people that you don't know, right? So I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna get to know my family a little more through looking at these images, and also have a memory and go through my grieving of my father through looking through these images, and revisit these stories that he told me growing up, because he was very much a storyteller. I mean, he even wrote a book, which is up there. You guys can buy it if you want to. It's up there. Not that particular book, but you can order it. He wrote a book about his whole childhood in Germany during the 1930s and 40s, which was a very hard time, as you know. So my grandmother was raising these kids during that time, and it was a hard time, as you know, but she kind of kept them busy and doing some things that were active and positive. And you could really tell this from her photography, because she was just trying to make things go. You know, when you're a parent, you're always, I mean, I have a 6-year-old, you're just always like, let's go, let's do this, let's get out, let's move, you know, and that's what you do as a parent. So you can gain your sanity also. Um, so, so where was I? So I had these photographs and I was going through them, and a lot of them are from the 40s and 50s. So I started picking some of these images. And so this is one of my father and my grandfather, Walter, in the Black Forest. So they would always go and ride their bicycles. So this was a time that my father talked about fondly. Like, he even would tell me bedtime stories about this little bird he was friends with who lived in the Black Forest, and they'd go on ventures together. So I wanted to do this painting based off of this photograph of hers. I actually have a couple of these. This is the photograph, and a lot of them are black and white, and I wanted to do color because I actually went to the Black Forest a couple of years ago, and I was thinking, you know, I have this vivid memory of the colors on the countryside, and I just love painting color. So I decided that's what I was going to do. So a lot of the ones that were black and white, I added my own colors into and emphasized it too. So like some of them are a little like, yeah, is it really that green? Well, at moments they are very much that green. And then this one here is Walter woodworking. So my grandfather, Walter, was like a romantic, and he just loved doing things for my grandmother. So this is him in her garden. She was really into gardening. So he was fixing something in her garden for her. And my father actually looked exactly like him. So, and my father actually did a lot of work and things for my mother, like build her things all the time. So this is very like, this just stands for that for me, you know, just this like husband doing something, caring for their partner, which I think is really something that stands for my dad, you know. So, and then the ones that were a little bit later. Okay, so there's a painting over here that's my father, Michael, and my aunt Monica when she was little, and this is in the sea, up by the North Sea. And my father loved boats; like he was always sailing boats and making toy boats. And so I wanted to do this one of him in the water. And sometimes I'll paint monochromatic, just because I just think it's like fun to just do the gesture, and you're focused more on just the figures and less on the color. And it also sets up a mood that's a little more spooky, for lack of a better word. This is another one of my father and Monica that was a black and white image. And then they immigrated to Monterey, California in the mid 60s. Sorry, mid 50s. And my grandmother continued to take photographs of them, even though they were getting older. And so some of these ones here are, portraits of them at Yosemite. This is my aunt when she's older at Yosemite, and this is a portrait of my grandfather would take portraits of my grandmother sitting. She'd always just sit and admire things. And she's also wearing yellow, which is I love wearing yellow. So there's like this connection I have with her because she's in these pictures with wearing yellow all the time. And then, so there's a couple, you can pick out the ones that are kind of Kodachrome color, and those are those kind of bright Kodachrome photography colors that I'm really drawn to. And then also that kind of more square format that happens with some of those newer images from the 50s or 60s. And then the ones that are more active, like there's ones that are like children playing in the swimming pool and people jumping and swimming. These are friends of hers that she had. And Germany is a very like active place. Like they're really into their outdoor spaces and fun and swimming and everything. And I feel like this city is very much that. And especially in the summer, there's these parks where you can take your kid and they're in this fountain and it's open. So I just thought it would be great to do some images of just her pictures of people doing things at lakes and rivers. So I did some of these paintings of those people being active and having fun together and being part of a city. Oh yeah.
Did you know your grandfather and grandmother?
I met my grandfather. Yeah, he passed away in 1988. And I was born in 1980. So I knew him, and yeah. I mean, my memory of him is different from these photographs, but we would go out to California, to Monterey, and visit them. So when my mom and dad got married in 1968, they ended up moving to Ohio, to a farm. My mother is a huge horse lover, so she moved to a horse farm. And that's a whole other side of the family story. But yeah, but of course my father was happy to go anywhere with her. And my aunt still lives in the Bay Area. She lives there on her own now at this point. And I'm going to go visit her next week. I wanted to say one more thing about my style of painting. I just don't paint a lot of details. I'm very much into like the impression and the mood of a space and the figure. So like when I do a portrait of someone, I'm not really into doing like, fine details. It's more about the impression and the mood and the color and the movement of the people in their space. And I like to do that because I like the viewer to be able to enter into it on their own and have their own stories to connect to it. So that's a huge part of how I paint and why I like to paint the way I do. And it's just kind of evolved that way. So that's a common thread that goes out throughout all of my work. And that's all I really have to say. If anybody has any questions, did I miss something?
Well, I have just there's a painting there of you. I'm thinking probably your grandfather with his father with the bicycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Kristen was mentioning when you look at the photograph, there's just this little teeny thing off to the left, but then when you painted it, you created the shoe. So when you look at these paintings, they're not like exactly like the photograph.
Oh no. Yeah.
You just embellished it as you choose to. Is that fair?
Oh yeah, like I'll do that. I'll take liberties to do that. So, I mean, in these paintings, I, for the most part, copied what her compositions were. But sometimes in painting, you have to make changes due to someone not understanding it. Like it's easy for people to look at a photograph and be like, oh, that's just someone's arm that's in the way, right? Or that's some wacky thing that happened. And when you look at the photograph, you're like, oh, that's what happened, right? But with painting, it's a little different. It's a little harder to come across with that, and that's always a challenge. That's always a challenge that sometimes you're wondering, does that work or not? I don't know, but.
I had a question. I really love this idea of excavating the past and reinterpreting it. What's the origin story behind how you started doing that?
I don't know. I've just always been kind of a melancholy, look at the past sort of person. Like, I just have always been interested in history and looking into why things are the way they are under, piles of magazines, like, I've always liked looking at old magazines and finding old pictures and asking, and then there's always these misconnections. Um, People forget things and their stories are different. And I just find that kind of a neat idea in general, like how objects belong to one place or they belong. Like, I love vintage clothing, for example. And like, one thing I really love about it is like, how many people did this shirt belong to? And like, where did they wear it? And how long did they own it? So it feels that way with photography to me too. It's like, this photo, it had a life at one point. There was someone who took it ahead of time, and they took the photo, and there was something that was a relation between it and the person there. And I just find that like a really rich, interesting thing to make paintings about. And there's just so much that's there.
That, obviously there's a gazillion of these. Like, you have like certain criteria, like something speaks to you about a particular image that you see or come across.
Usually it just starts with like, it's either like the figure that's doing something that I'm really interested in. I find there's some sort of story with that person that I find a connection to that relates to something in my life, or it could just be the colors. It could just be like, I like that dress and I want to paint that dress because it's really pretty, and it's got really neat colors and I want to paint that. Nothing can be like, sometimes it's just not deep. It's like, not, it can just be something really simple. And that's kind of what I like about it. It's like, yeah. Like, I'm always going to be addicted to the colors from like the 50s and 60s. Like, that's just not going to really ever leave my palette because I'm just so drawn to that. But of course, those colors are part of every decade. It's not like they're those colors, but because I've spent so much time painting vintage photography and looking at it, I don't think it's ever really going to go away. Not that I want it to. It's just, it's always going to be part of it. Does that answer your question? Sort of.
A quick follow-up. I'm so curious when you talk about, 1930s, 1940s. You were going through the photo album. Were there any photos that were not so bucolic? Were there photos that captured what was happening?
Yeah, there were a lot, and I did not paint them. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whoever was taking the photo just really wanted, because of what was happening, I am just going to capture this. Makes me happy rather than.
Yeah, no, she took pictures of, there were Nazi flags and not great things. Yeah, but I did not choose to paint those things. It was mostly like the cities. You would see it in the spans of the city pictures she was taking of the buildings at the time. So you would see banners and stuff, and you're like, ooh. I could go into the whole thing, but I don't think I want to right now. Like, how hard it was. My dad actually wrote that book. Like, it's all about spending his childhood in bomb shelters. So it's pretty horrendous, the time for their friends and escaping that. So I think a lot of it was my grandparents, my oma and opa, trying to help them cope through these horrible times. My father had horrible nightmares his whole life. And writing this book was a huge part of his therapy to go through the grief of it. Yeah. So there were probably over 100 images to choose from. So I was going through so many of these pictures. And when it came down to it, I would just be like, there's this portrait of my grandmother, and I just really want to paint her sitting on that rock. So I could actually just do a whole other set of paintings on the paintings, the photographs that were in that book, that it would be very similarly awesome, and but I just went with the ones I thought would be most interesting compositionally. Yeah.
So you stuck with the composition.
Mostly compositionally, but also like how the colors would work and how I felt a connection to those specific people doing those specific things. Like this one of my grandfather working, I feel so much connection in that. I mean, especially since I started woodworking recently. I just repaired some doors from our house with my neighbor who's 75 years old, and he was teaching me all these things, and I just felt like I needed to paint this painting of my grandfather actively making something, or my grandmother admiring, just looking out across the lake. Yeah, I think it might also come around to me more later. Like I will look at them more and come back to them and be like, okay, that's why I painted that. And I may not be able to give you an exact answer to why it's those exact pictures, but it just always comes down to like, I get this gut feeling that that's going to work. When I look at photograph, lots of the mark making and shapes I want to make kind of flat and geometric in a way, and I like that contrast between a geometric mark and something that's a little more soft, like the facial feature. Am I thinking about that more? Yeah.
Why do you like it? How do you like it?
Well, there is a flatness to photography, right? So I will push the color. I will push the shadows if it's like not right. Like, was this exactly how it was in the background? No. Like, I did put more greenery in. I did put more bright colors in. His shirt is a lot flatter in some areas than it would have been, you know. And then I do use a lot of flat brushes.
Okay.
That could just be, yeah. So yeah. So I break it apart, and that's kind of how but I like that immediacy to it. Like, it's like, I don't like to like, sometimes I'll just like to make a flat mark, and that's enough. And I don't need to like needle into it, because once you do that, your eye goes crazy. And I like to be able to kind of float in those quieter spaces between something that's like more graphic or a little more flat. Does that make sense to you? So the titles, someone was asking about the titles, like the German titles. They're mostly titled in German because they were little things in the books, inscriptions that she was writing about what the picture was. And this one's called Windfläche. So it's like, it means wind catcher in German. And I'm learning German now. I've been learning it for 3 years, and it's sehr schwer. It's a sehr schwer. But yes. So this one actually is in Germany, but it's interesting that it looks kind of like California, doesn't it? But yeah, it was just her walking through this field. I don't know exactly where she was, and the colors I invented more so, like the blues and the grass and the color of her coat. I don't know. I think that maybe was a broken down barn or something, and I thought, oh, this painting really just needs some blue in it, some kind of, yeah.
It has a different feeling.
That was the first one I did too, so that's always something that's funny when I don't know if you feel that way when you're working, that like if you start a show,
Oh, sure.
you're like, this is my first painting.
What is the last one?
Some of the smaller ones, like the one actually next to that one of her. So this is my grandmother sitting in her Schlafzimmer, in her bedroom in Monterey, wearing yellow again.
How long does it take you to
I am actually a pretty fast painter compared to a lot of other painters. Like this painting probably took me about like maybe 40 hours, something like that. But it's it's all over the map. Some are faster than others. Sometimes the ones that are faster turn out a lot better because the longer I fidget, the worse it gets. So like sometimes the fastest paintings I do turn out the best. Yeah. I have 2 easels, and I have those 2, and then I have some on the walls, and then, you know, depending on the timing of wetness, what the light is that day, you know, what I want to work on that day, you know, like what I don't want to work on that day, you know, it just kind of gets juggled around. Or Amelia, did you have a question?
Actually, it was about
Oh,
that. So,
was it the same question?
sort of, but what I noticed most is your attention.
I have been, yeah. Yeah, I guessed that that was the color, but I actually just really am into pink these days. So, and I really didn't like pink as a kid growing up. I always was like, oh, that's the girl color. Everybody just associates pink with girls, and I don't want to be that, you know. And I was just like, I don't, stay away. And now I'm like, pink is amazing, and I want to use it all the time in paintings. You know, like it's just such a great color. And Christina. Oh yeah, Andrew Wyeth. Yeah. Oh yeah, I love that painting. That's actually at the Cleveland Museum of Art. Hmm?
Was that any kind of touchstone?
You know, now that you're bringing it up, probably, because it is one of my favorite paintings, and I love Andrew Wyeth. Yeah, I love Wyeth. Yeah, Wyeth is amazing. Very detailed.
Well, this does have a psychological quality like a Wyatt.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, she's like stretching across the. She can't walk, right?
She's
crippled. Yeah.
And that's really helps.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks for coming.